I'm Heidi Harris. Welcome to the Heidi Harris Show podcast. I do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can subscribe at iTunes, Heidi Harris Show, and you can find all things Heidi Harris at HeidiHarris.com. You sign up for my newsletter. You can find out some information about my new book, Don't Pat Me on the Head. I will be doing my first book signing on Saturday, March 24th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Airstream Las Vegas at Russell and 95 in Las Vegas. I'm very excited about that. So please plan to join me. Find out all the details at HeidiHarris.com. An interesting development occurred over the last few days in Nevada politics. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about politics and getting in the weeds because, frankly, it doesn't interest me that much. You know, if somebody does something, okay, but as far as every little race, I don't pay as much attention to it as some people do. But when the president told Danny Tarkanian, basically on Twitter, that he needed to get out of the Senate race so that Dean Heller wouldn't lose, he didn't put it that way, but that's basically what it is. Danny Tarkanian had no choice but to join the very crowded field for the open CD3 position. That's the Congressional District 3 that Jackie Rosen just vacated to run for Senate against Dean Heller. But there are a lot of other people who are running for the CD3 race, some very good ones. Some of them are friends of Danny Tarkanian. So this puts him in a bit of an awkward position. And what's also interesting is that Dean Heller was a very loud never Trumper. And normally, this is the kind of thing that sinks you with Donald Trump. So what gives? Why would Donald Trump basically reward a never Trumper by trying to get rid of any opposition when it could basically backfire on him? I thought Donald Trump remembered forever when people said negative things about him. Joining me on the Heidi Harris Show podcast is Danny Tarkanian. Danny, what a crazy, crazy couple of days.
Yeah, it really has. It's been something I'd never imagined.
Well, obviously, you felt like you had a very strong chance to beat Dean Heller. Why do you suppose Donald Trump wanted you to kind of basically get out of the way to protect Dean Heller, especially in light of the fact that Dean Heller had a lot of negative things to say about Donald Trump?
Yeah, that's why I never thought President Trump would do this. First of all, they say he's a very loyal person, and there's been nobody that's been more supportive in Nevada than I have been, and there's been nobody, and they also say that he holds a grudge and remembers everything, and there's not been anybody in Nevada on the Republican side that said worse things about him. But what I think happened is Mitch McConnell, I know for sure, Mitch McConnell and a lot of the people, the establishment people, Washington, D.C., were putting pressure on President Trump to support Heller for several months now. And somewhere along the line, they must have finally convinced him, hey, let's get Danny out before the primary so that Heller doesn't get beat up really badly and possibly not be able to recover. And they've already convinced him that Heller has the best chance to win a general, which they are just underestimating the outrage people have in Nevada for Heller. And many of them have emailed me and expressed disappointment. I've gotten out and said they'll never vote for Heller, even though they're strong Republicans.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're speaking with Danny Tarkanian. I have certainly seen that on my Facebook page. I posted some things on the Heidi Harris Show Facebook page about Dean Heller in this situation. And boy, people just don't want to vote for him. And this is exactly what happened with Joe Heck. So even without you in the race, I don't necessarily see a clear path to re-election for Dean Heller.
Well, I tried to explain that to his political director that called me up and said, you don't understand the sentiment here in Nevada. They are very strong Trump supporters. They all know what Dean Heller did to him. They know that he has only started supporting Trump after I got in the race, and he's only going to do it until the primary ends. While on the other side, I have the best shot at winning the general election. I lost to Jackie Rosen by 1%, the closest race anybody had in Nevada last election, with the entire GOP leadership coming out against Trump. I was the only one that wouldn't. And instead, this year we're going to have President Trump on in the White House with the power of the White House and the effect of the positive effect of all of his policies. I think it's going to be easy to make up 1%, but how's Heller going to make it up if he loses 5% or 10% of the base?
Well, that's very true. And, you know, something interesting a friend of mine said to me today, just a thought about it, was he said, well, maybe because Hillary won in Nevada, maybe they figured that Dean Heller could appeal to more of the middle of the road and those kind of folks. And you know what, Danny, I don't find that to be true. I don't think the Democrats are going to vote for him because he said negative things about Trump. I've not seen that benefit any Republicans yet.
Of course not. And what they miss out is Mitt Romney lost the state by 7%. McCain lost by 9%. They were both very moderate. Trump lost by 2%. He did much better than them, and Trump had the entire top of the GOP against him. Our governor, our senator, our Senate candidate, the other congressman. They all came out against him, and they still overperformed Romney by 5 and McCain by 7. They're underestimating what people like about Trump. It isn't as much party lines as it's the hardworking middle-class Americans who want to take care of Americans first, American workers first, they're voting for him and they support him. And there's a lot of them here in Clark County that may not be registered Republicans, but will still vote for that philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Now that you've jumped into the CD3 race, you kind of have to, and the president suggests that you do it, right? I'm sure some of the people who thought they had a clear path in CD3 are probably not real thrilled about this.
You know, I'm one of my closest friends in politics, if not the closest, is Victoria Seaman. She volunteered on my 2010 campaign. She's been 100% support of mine in anything I've done, and she's in the CD3 race, and I feel horrible for her. And I told her 3 or 4 months ago, I'll do anything I can to help you, Victoria, as long as it doesn't hurt my family. Obviously, my family comes first. And I had to make a decision. The president tells me to get into the CD3 race. He'll endorse me, and I have $500,000 in contributions there. Do I say no to the president and when I would have the best opportunity to win the seat and give Victoria, a chance with the other 11 people in right around the GOP side? Or do I get in the race and I think I'll be a big favorite in the primary? And I just figured my family and I have put up with a lot over the 14 years. We've had some different disappointing losses. This is a chance for us to finally realize something positive of all the campaigning we've done. And I did what was best for my family, and I did what was best for the Republican Party, and I did what was best for Donald Trump and his America First policies.
Yeah, what choice do you have? You really don't have a choice. If you decided to defy the president, that would have ticked everybody off. Obviously, the national GOP would have hated you, and so you really did not have a choice. How are you feeling about the CD3 race? You got some good people in it, but how are you feeling? What are your constituents telling you who wanted you to beat Dean Heller? Because they still hate Heller, and they're probably disappointed that you're in the CD3 race, but what are the folks in CD3 telling you?
Well, I've been trying to reach out to some of the really outspoken and more active supporters of mine in the Senate race and call them and explain why I did this. Because, as you mentioned, some of them were very disappointed that now there's nobody to run against Heller and he has a clear path. So I spent most of my time these past 2 days explaining that to them. We'll start concentrating on contacting immediate CD3 voters later. But I thought it was more important to reach out to the people who have helped me personally throughout the state and give them a firsthand explanation of what happened. And again, as I mentioned, this is not the decision I wanted to make, but it was a decision the President of the United States, who's the leader of the party I belong to, has requested. And I've been involved in sports a long time, and when your coach tells you to do something, even if you don't like it, you need to do it. He's the coach, and that's what I did.
That's true. Don't you think this kind of makes Dean Heller look a little pathetic that the president had to come in at the last minute and rescue him? I mean, that's how it looks to a lot of people.
Well, he was on the ropes completely. First of all, how does it look when he comes out and tells everybody he vehemently opposes our nominee? I will never support him. He encouraged Joe Heck to have that press conference, said that he wanted a special prosecutor to investigate President Trump. And then all of a sudden I get in the race and now he's Trump's best BFF. I think that says a lot about the characteristics of Dean Heller. But he's a man of survival. He's a political animal. He knows what it takes to maintain in power. And cozying up to the president was one of them. And also he did everything he could through Mitch McConnell and the rest of the people in the establishment to pressure Trump to make this move. I think if they did, they know that I had a very good opportunity to beat him, and that's why they did it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Danny. This is pretty exciting stuff. This is unprecedented that I'm aware of. I'm certain it's happened before, but pretty amazing for the president to come in and take an interest in a race like this and want to try to fix it so that his boy wins, and hopefully you'll do well in CD3. Clearly, he thought you had a shot, or he wouldn't have recommended that you go for CD3.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, Heidi, and again, I am very thankful that the president has the confidence in me to want me to run in CD3, which is a very important congressional pickup seat for the Republicans.
Yes, it is. Well, I wish you the best, Danny, and we'll see what happens pretty soon here, won't we?
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Danny. Yes, it's fascinating to watch what's going on in D.C., isn't it? The alligators are definitely in charge of the swamp. And who knows what kind of dealing went on behind the scenes. You know, Dean Heller had to be begging and pleading. See, this is the interesting thing. Danny was too nice to say it. But honestly, how pathetic does this make Heller look? Clearly, Washington, D.C. is worried about one of two things. They're either worried that Danny would beat Heller in a primary and not be able to win the general, which I don't know if that would happen or not, but that's what they're maybe concerned about. But either way, that shows that Heller's weak, that Heller, they think, could be beaten by Danny Tarkanian. That's pretty bad. The GOP, if they didn't think Danny was the best candidate for the Senate race, they should have found somebody better. This is the problem. And losing a Senate seat would be huge. And I thought Danny had a shot. We'll see. Clearly, the president thought Danny had a shot to beat Dean Heller. So Dean Heller's got to be looking like the laughing stock of the GOP. And I don't dislike Dean Heller. Understand, I don't dislike him. I know he's another alligator in the swamp, and he's not been a solid conservative like a lot of people would like. But on a personal basis, I don't dislike him. But I know a lot of voters can't stand him. They're ticked off. They feel like he just says go along to get along, and he bashed their president. So, wow, I would love to have been on the phone calls that took place before the final decision to ask Danny to step aside and get into the CD3 race. I got to tell you, it's going to be a real food fight because there are a lot of people, and some of them are very good candidates in the CD3 race. But you know what? It's very, very difficult. This is politics. Crazy things happen at the last minute. Some of the people who are running for CD3 are more qualified than others. Some have more political experience than others. And in Danny's case, he knows enough, he's smart enough, he's savvy enough to say, hey, if the president says wink, wink, wouldn't it be great if Danny stepped out? You know what? He's smart enough to do it. And the other candidates in the CD3 race are going to have a choice. This happens all the time, whether it was Ted Cruz, and the last thing he wanted to do was endorse Donald Trump, obviously Rick Perry. So sometimes these things happen at the national level, clearly. But sometimes they happen on the local level. Maybe everybody's not paying attention. But if you are a candidate for any race and something crazy like this happens with Danny, or something where it looks like you're not possibly going to win, you know what? The best thing to do is try to get out in front of the parade and try to do the best you can to salvage your political career. The fact that you have a setback isn't the end of the world. You may think it's the end of the world because to you, this is your whole life. You've put your heart and soul into this, but it's not the end of your political career. Not if you handle things correctly. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens in Nevada. And I don't believe that the Democrats are going to get the big wins they think in 2018. Not at all. Even if they think that Donald Trump runs a crazy White House, well, who hasn't? Everybody has a job nowadays. The economy's humming. You got the tax cuts. People have money in their pocket. You know what, Democrats? Don't count your chickens before they're elected. I'm just saying. Just some advice from me to you. Coming up this Saturday, I'm very excited. My very first book signing, public book signing, is going to be at Airstream of Las Vegas. That's Airstream Las Vegas, Russell and 95. So it's at Russell Road, right off the 95 out there in Henderson. You can't miss it. You can't miss the Airstreams. You can see them from the highway there. So please plan to join me 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's Airstream Las Vegas, right there on Saturday, March 24th. Very, very happy about this. The people out there at Airstream are fantastic. We're going to have a great time. Once again, Saturday, March 24th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'm going to be selling my new book, Don't Pat Me on the Head, and I'll have some copies of my first book, Cocktail Waitress Wisdom. Don't Pat Me on the Head is $15. My Cocktail Waitress Wisdom book, I'll give it to you for half off the Amazon price at $5, and I'll sign them. If you've already bought a book on Amazon, I know many of you already have. If you have, don't worry, just bring it. I'll be happy to sign it. That's Airstream Las Vegas this Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I will see you there. In the meanwhile, remember, regardless of what race you're in, regardless of what particular political side of the aisle you fall on, God has created you for a purpose. Here's Tony Scottwell.